Welcome to the Independent Producers Organization program. This is the program that showcases independent producers, their productions, and provides a forum for discussing issues which affect independent television producers here in the Pacific Northwest.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Independent Producers Organization live showcase. Today we have a call-in from Minneapolis, Minnesota, World Population Balance. Let me see if I can I hear our caller? His name is David Paxson. Is he there now? David?
First call is usually pretty bumpy, so hopefully they'll get him up there as soon as possible here.
All right.
So what's David about?
The World Population Balance is what he is.
That's the name of the organization?
Yeah, that's his website, and he's got what do you call it? It's not a leaflet. It's a publication.
A pamphlet?
Yeah, right. And he has some articles on it. Sustainable Population Pledge can save humanity. That's very good in itself. He spent a lot of time working on this.
Does this come out every month or something?
Well, I called back and requested this. So if you go to worldpopulationbalance.org, I think you can get it. As a matter of fact, I think I've got that wrong. There it should be, instead of COM, it should be ORG.
More than likely,
but
yeah.
Since it's so important.
He's up there?
Hello.
All right. Welcome to the program.
David?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, we were just Richard. My name is Jim. Richard was just telling us about your World Population Balanced, and could you just talk a little bit about yourself and your organization before we get started?
That'd be good.
Well, sure. The world has gone in the less than 100 years. The world population has increased by over 5 billion people, from 2 billion in 1930 to now over 7 billion. And of course, that's way more than the resources of the planet can sustainably support, according to many resource experts on resources in the world. They're saying that the resources of the planet can sustainably support probably around 2 billion people, maybe 3. Some people think maybe 4 billion, but some think that it's really that the resources can't sustainably support long-term even 1 billion people, especially if we want to stop the extinction of other species and the rapid depletion of many of our vital resources. So we're in a real predicament, humanity on the planet. And our mission at World Population Balance is to help humanity avoid the cliff of overpopulation collapse by dramatically reducing human numbers on the planet through the reduction of birth rates. And that's the humane way to reduce population on the planet to a sustainable level, by reducing birth rates. Obviously, if we fail to rise to this challenge, to humanely reduce birth rates dramatically, then nature is going to step in the coming days, months, years, and so on, with increasing famines, wars, disease, misery, suffering, and early death. And I don't know a human being alive in the world that thinks that is a humane way to go. It's not. It's terrible. So we've got to rise to this challenge to dramatically reduce human numbers on the planet by following the lead of places like Thailand, for example. 40-some years ago in Thailand, they were averaging 7 children per couple, meaning that many of them are having 8 and 9 children. Today, thanks to tremendous leadership on this issue and a lot of humor, they used a lot of humor to help Thai people realize that their children would be benefited by dramatic reduction in the numbers. Now they're having an average of less than two children per couple. It was down almost to about 1.5. Now it's back up to about 1 3/4 or so.
I think that's amazing that they've done that. And there was another country that did that also. Is that right?
Yeah, well, there's several other countries that have done it. Brazil has dramatically reduced their birth rates. There are a number of countries around the world who have voluntarily, helped their people in their countries to voluntarily really slash their birth rates to way low from what it used to be. And of course, throughout most of human history, it was really important that our ancestors had lots of children because the death rates used to be so high. You know, like if a couple had 10 kids a couple hundred years ago, if a couple had 10 kids, maybe only one or two would live to be adults because 6 or 8 would die, 3 or 4 would die as infants, and then 3 or 4 more would die in childhood. And my gosh, it was just terrible. But that's all changed now.
Well, isn't it true that that's still the case in a lot of third world nations, whereas in the first world nations, they have reduced their population to a great degree?
I'm sorry. What is it you're asking is true in the third?
Well, it just seems like in the third world that there still is a lot of overpopulation, and possibly because so many of them die for whatever reasons, the hungers and all the different reasons why that the mortality is much higher in other countries.
Well, sure. Well, yes and no. I mean, their mortality rates in a lot of developing countries, certainly they are higher than in developed countries, but they're significantly lower. I think even in the highest countries with the highest mortality rates today, my understanding is that those mortality rates there today in the highest mortality rate countries are significantly lower than they were 50 or 100 years ago in those countries. So in other words, all over the world, death rates have dropped tremendously in the last couple hundred years, more so in the developed countries, as you're saying, but still they've dropped dramatically in a lot of the developing countries as well. However, the birth rates, you see, have dropped not as far. They have not dropped anywhere near as far, especially in some of the developing countries.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just thinking the big picture of trying to reduce the population. I think there's two things. One is we have to stop the increase in population that's going on now, the one that makes 1 billion new people every 12 years. We have to stop that. And then the next thing is we have to reduce the population that's there. Seems
surely that can help, but frankly, we believe that from a mindset standpoint, from a public awareness standpoint, we need to just really look at it as all one thing, and that is that we're at over 7 billion people now on the planet. We're headed on up with several billion more, according to most of the what they call the medium projections before 2100. However, if we followed the lead of Thailand, if all the world followed the lead of Thailand and slashed their birth rates like Thailand did, do you realize that by 2100, total population would be back down from 7.2 billion, where it is now roughly, back down to about 5 billion people by 2100. That would be a tremendous, huge victory for all of humanity to have human numbers drop between now and 2100. That's less than 90 years away, back down to 5 billion, on its way toward 4, 3, maybe 2 billion, 3 billion, somewhere in there. And if we average, that's an average of 1.5 children per couple. And if we averaged instead, if we got the average down even lower, down closer to an average of 1 child per family, that means by 2100, total human numbers on the planet would be back down to a little under 3 billion, right about 3 billion. And that would be a tremendous lightening of the load on resources. That would cut in half our consumption of vital resources. Right now, every year in the world right now, we humans are gobbling up and destroying about 75 million acres of farmland in the world. That's equivalent to 2 Iowas or two Wisconsins. They're similar size there. And, that's how much farmland is being lost to 2 main reasons. One is erosion, of course, and the other is just more sprawl, more development, more highways, roads, shanty towns, McMansions, all the kinds of things that humans are building on this planet as they continue to overpopulate more and more.
It seems to me that reducing the birth rates is definitely a solution, but it seems like it's kind of a slow solution. And you're talking about by 2100, if we all did like Thailand. But what happens between now and then? I mean, depleting these 75 million acres of farmland, would you say a year? There won't be anything left by the time 2100 comes along. It just seems to me that although I'm fully supporting the long-range solution of reducing birth rates, this alone isn't going to really save us, I wouldn't think.
Well, certainly I would agree with you that there's going to be tremendous discomfort and upheaval between now and 2100. But there's no other, as far as we can tell, Jim, there's no other humane option. Humanity, we've kicked the can, our predecessors have kicked the can down the road way too long. They've sugar-coated this issue way too long. They've not told the truth to the American public and to the other people in the world, the truth being that we're significantly overpopulated, both globally and in the United States and in Minnesota, where I live, and Oregon, where you folks are. Probably every state in the United States has more people in it right now than the resources can sustainably provide for over the next coming decades. Well, that means that it's crucial that every American become aware that the world and the nation are overpopulated, and therefore the only real humane course we can take is to dramatically drop birth rates. Is it going to be fun and easy and pleasant? Heck no. It's going to have challenges, and it's going to be difficult. But we have no other humane choice.
You're right. You're right. There's no other way to do it, because, I was thinking a while back, the politicians, they want more people. They think they get more votes if they have more people. Companies, we want more business, so they want more people. But there was an article here in the Oregonian here a while back. U.S. feeling big climate change now, report says. The effects of human-induced climate change are being felt in every corner of the United States. Scientists reported Tuesday, and water growing scarcer in the dry regions, torrential rains increasing in wet regions, heat waves becoming more likely, more severe, wildfires growing worse, and forests dying under assault from heat-loving insects. And that's just what you were saying. They're tearing down forests, and it's making it more difficult for the weather. The weather is what we're getting now as a result of all this change, and they think by tearing down these an acre at a time that's a good thing. It's not. We're paying for it with the bad weather.
Sure. Well, of course, the thing that we're committed to at World Population Balance is to help Americans to move forward successfully, positively, to actually work to solve overpopulation. We've got to quit wringing our hands and spinning our wheels, and just keep fretting about the problems of overpopulation. We know the problems of overpopulation. They're real. They're valid. They're not going away. They're only getting worse. You know that every 4.5 days, the population of the world right now, every 4.5 days, has an additional 1 million people alive. Every 4.5 days. In fact, I've got a little prop there. I use a metronome. Can you all hear that? Can you hear the ticking?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we
can. Hear that? Yeah. Every time this thing ticks right here, the world has an additional human passenger, net gain, births minus deaths. Now, when I play that for third graders, and I do that all the time, third graders, fifth graders, first graders, high school kids, when I play that metronome, a lot of third graders mistakenly think that that sound that you hear right there, they mistakenly think that's the birth rate. But you know what? The birth rate is way faster than that. That's actually, I've done the math here, births minus deaths. That's the net gain. Every time that ticks, the world has an additional passenger, births minus death. Net increase. And yet, you know, every 24 hours we have over 200,000 more people alive on the planet. And every 24 hours we don't have another bunch of farmland to grow food for that 200,000 more people. We don't have more fish in the oceans. We don't have more fresh water in the world, more forests. In fact, not only do we not have more to keep up with that kind of growth, we actually have less of all those vital resources and many, many more.
That's right.
And by the way, too, you mentioned earlier about our Sustainable Population Pledge on our website, worldpopulationbalance.org. We invite all listeners to this and all viewers to this to go to our website, worldpopulationbalance.org, and you'll see on there where it says, sign our Sustainable Population Pledge. We'd love to have all of you come and sign it. We've written the pledge very carefully so that there are 3 sections to it, and every person alive in the world is eligible to check off and to sign up on one of those 3 sections. One section says for people that have had more than one child, then they can sign that pledge part of it, that section that says, I pledge to have no more children. Another section for people that haven't had any children yet is a section where they can pledge to have either one or none. And another section is if I'm an older person, I've already had my family, my children are all grown up, then I pledge to help my children and other people on the planet and people I know understand that the world is overpopulated and we're in a crisis of overpopulation, and the only humane solution to that is to dramatically reduce birth rates. And also, we have a brand new offer, a gift for any of your viewers who would like to get some of these. We just yesterday from the printer got several thousand little cards that we actually did this 3 years ago, but we've updated them now, and they're the size of a business card, so they fit easily into a person's pocket or wallet or purse. And the title on these is Solving Overpopulation Humanely. And we have one panel there that talks about what we need to do to solve overpopulation. We have 2 panels inside this. It's a folded card, so it's got 4 panels on it. And the inside, overpopulation facts. And in fact, here's an interesting thing. You know, a lot of people mistakenly think that a 2-child average will solve overpopulation if we got the average number of children per couple down to 2.
No.
But it actually won't solve overpopulation. And we show that on a little graph right in this little business-sized card that we are offering people to, if they want to go to our website and send me an email through our website at worldpopulationbalance.org and ask for these cards and give us their mailing address, we will mail out some of these cards to people that would like to have some to distribute to their friends. And then on the back panel, we say back there, we say, take action, spread the message that can succeed to actually humanely solve overpopulation. And then we have some ideas there about what people can do to help do that.
You can send some more to me if you want also.
Great.
And
Great.
I want to congratulate you for getting into schools and talking to kids. I thought that was very difficult because the heads of the principals and all that, oh no, we don't want anything about overpopulation in here. And
yeah, well, we do age appropriate things, you know. I mean, in other words, the kind of things we're talking about right now, a lot of those we don't talk about with 5th graders or 3rd graders.
Right.
But we can help 3rd graders understand that population is increasing. In fact, one of my favorite little lessons with 5th graders, 3rd graders, is to take I've got a glass salad bowl, and I take a bucket and I put some water in the bucket with food coloring in it, a little food coloring, and then I take a half-cup measuring cup and a full cup measuring cup, and we choose 2 volunteers in the classroom. Two students come forward. One of them gets to be the stork, And of course, we jokingly say that the stork brings babies, but we know that's not really true. That's just a joke, right? And then the other person gets to be the Grim Reaper, and they're the person that takes people off the planet. So then the stork takes the cup measure and takes the cup measure and dips it into the colored water, and then puts that water into the bowl. And then the Grim Reaper takes the half cup measure and scoops some colored water out of the bowl back into the bucket. And of course, once they keep doing that over and over and over for a while, the students are all clearly seeing right in front of their eyes that the bowl representing the world and the colored water representing people, they see that the world is filling up and filling up and filling up with people until eventually it overflows.
Okay.
You know,
David,
I remember, I think it was probably the 70s, I started hearing about zero population growth is what you were talking about. Yeah. Every couple just having, you know, a child to replace themselves, so to speak. And you said that would not stabilize the overpopulation, and I'm wondering why that is.
That's a great question. Yeah, because back in the 70s, you're right on target there, Jim. Back in the 70s, see, that message was appropriate in 1970. In other words, the message, stop at 2, messages like that, stop at 2, have one for him and one for her, things like that. That, back then, when the world had 3.5 billion people, if we had successfully in the world gotten the average down, like in Thailand, where they have below 2 now, if we had successfully gotten the world birth rate average down to at or a little under 2, then the population on the planet would have probably peaked out at maybe 4 billion, 4.5 billion, something like that. And then we could easily reduce that a little more down to 2 or 3 billion if people felt that it was needed. However, we failed to do that. Our predecessors failed to stop population growth, right? They kicked the can down the road. They sugarcoated the message. They didn't tell the grim truth of the reality of the situation. So what would happen now is if population tomorrow, if family size would drop down to a 2-child average, our population total would go from a little over 7 billion, where it is now, on up for several more decades, clear up to almost 9 billion people on a planet where we can sustainably provide for probably only 2 to 3 billion at the most. All right, yeah. And then it would stay for the next 200 years. Population level at a 2-child average would stay above 8 billion people, above 8 billion. And that's just wholly not sustainable. You know, I think a lot about the example of the state of Wisconsin, which has less than 6 million people in it right now. Geographically, Wisconsin is almost identical in size to the whole country of Bangladesh. But Bangladesh doesn't have 6 million people, or 12 million, or 24, or
probably
48,
60.
or 96 million. There's over 150 million people
incredible.
in Bangladesh crammed into an area the size of Wisconsin. That's wholly not sustainable for a decent kind of life.
It's worse than not sustainable. I mean, it's I can't say criminal, but a lot of the reasons why those countries that have that kind of overpopulation is due to the mechanizations of government and the corruption and the deliberate problems with food distribution. It seems to me that I've read on the political end of it.
Well, that's a minor part of it, frankly, because the country of Bangladesh, I'm told by Bangladeshis who recently immigrated to the U.S., as well as some people who study Bangladesh, that some 2/3 of the people in Bangladesh don't get enough. You know, they're struggling just to survive. That's like 100 million human beings just in one country alone.
Yeah.
And of course, India, it's even worse, and lots of other countries. So the whole world. You know, I used to do a lot of boating. I used to teach sailing and things at summer camps and swimming and all that, waterfront director. And there's an old saying in boating that you cannot sink half a boat. If a boat gets a hole, you either plug up the hole in the boat and keep the whole boat floating, or the whole doggone boat sinks. Right now, this whole boat, Spaceship Earth, that we're all on, we've got holes in our boat all over the place, and we're sinking fast. And the only way that that any of us can survive is if we plug up the holes in the boat that we've got right now.
You know, David, one of the problems is everything here is just so perfect. Everybody is just so happy. They all have jobs. They don't have anything to do with the garbage. Garbage just goes away. Everything is just wonderful. And they don't realize this doesn't take care of the toxic problems, the garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean, dead zones everywhere. Sure. They just don't realize there is a place where their toxic waste has to go and has to be taken care of.
Sure, you're right. Yeah, we're pretty isolated in the U.S. We're insulated and isolated from the grim realities in the U.S. You know,
right.
I had when I was a high school kid, I had a life-changing experience when I was about 10th, 11th grade. I went to a developing country as an exchange student and lived with a family there, you know, and wow, was that ever a shock for a kid from a small town in the Midwest of the U.S., you know, that'd never been out of the country before. And then when I was in college, I had a second life-changing experience when I was fortunate enough to be in a singing group in college that the administration decided to send that group on a tour all the way around the world for 8 weeks to 17 countries. And we stayed with families in half the countries in India, Bombay, India, and other places, Mumbai, and went to the old Soviet Union and so on. And boy, another shocking, life-changing experience to be in countries as a young adult like that, to see the overwhelming masses of humanity. I'll never forget, we were landing in an airport. I can't remember exactly which country it was. And of course, here at our airports in the U.S., you know, we got the tarmac, and then you got the green, grassy sections in between the runways, right? Well, in this country, right smack off the tarmac, I mean, I looked out the window. I was sitting by the window past the wing, and just a few feet beyond the wing, right off the tarmac, there were all kinds of people lying there and sitting there and watching our plane as we sped by to land. And I couldn't help, as a college kid at that time, I couldn't help but ask myself, my golly, what would happen to several dozen of those people if our plane blew a left tire and had to veer off to the left right there and could careen into those guys? I couldn't believe they were just right smack next to the runway like that.
I just think they could have gone somewhere and gotten an education and better spent their time than sitting there watching your plane come in.
Well, who knows? Perhaps they didn't have the resources to do that. You know, I mean, yeah. I'm not going to judge them on that, but
okay.
But this is the predicament that humanity has brought onto this planet, and that is that we have dramatically overpopulated. My father, born over a century ago now, he was the oldest of 6 kids, and that was pretty common to have 6, 7, 8 kids in families back then. And I'm one of 3. And when I was in college, my first formal exposure to the overpopulation issue was in some classes at the School of Natural Resources at the University of Michigan years ago. And when I came home for our next break, and I was talking about this population issue, I'd never heard of it before, formally, and I was surprised that my dad had done reading and study about it, and he'd even given a talk about it to a men's group that he was in at our church. And he told me then, he said, if your mother and I had realized when we were having children what was going on about population growth in the world, I'm sure we wouldn't have had all 3 of you. We would have stopped sooner. And I understood that perfectly well. I knew that it had nothing to do with his feelings about me or my brother or my sister. He loved all of us dearly, but he also woke up to the realization later in his life. He was jolted awake by some of the studying that he did that the world is overpopulated.
Just a quick housekeeping. Your website is up there on the screen in front of us all. And is there a D on the end of balance? Is it balanced?
No, just world population balance.
There's no D on it because on your paper here it says balanced view. So I just want to make sure that we got the right spelling up there.
Oh yeah. No, Balanced View. That's the name. That's the name of our newsletter.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned something about going to other countries, because what we're talking about, what you are talking about, seems like it's geared more towards the United States. Are you working in, you mentioned India, Bangladesh. Are you working in any of those other parts of the world?
We do partnerships with a lot of people working in other countries, population activists. Yes. To stop overpopulation around the world.
Do you know anything about the tubal ligations they're trying to do in India? It's been in the paper recently.
Well, I've been familiar with those for several decades. Yes.
Right.
I'm not sure what that is, so you might mention that to what people that are viewing what that's about.
A tubal ligation is a process, a contraceptive process, where similar for women, similar in effect to the vasectomy for a man, where
Right.
they go in and they snip the vas deferens, so that men are no longer fertile for having a child. And of course, a tubal ligation does something similar with women, where they then prevent the egg from it cannot, there won't be eggs to be fertilized and so on.
Did you see the article that I'm referring to, or the information about what happened? Apparently there were some problems, and I think they need to keep doing it, but they need to do it under clean circumstances and good medicine. But
Sure. Well,
it's a great solution.
You see, once our vision is, part of our vision is this: once all Americans understand, or nearly all Americans, let's say, once most Americans understand that the world and the United States are already significantly overpopulated above and beyond what resources can truly sustainably support, a lot of them will line up to have either a tubal ligation or a vasectomy or some other means of more reliable birth control, because once people wake up to the grim truth here, they realize that, my gosh, this is a crisis, and if I want to have a child come into this world, and of course some people are saying they don't want to have children come into this world because it's the future looks so bleak in many ways, but if they do have one child, then by not having any more children, that one child is going to have a much better chance for a decent life. In fact, we often say that one-child families can save the world right now, and that's really the reality. By more and more families in the world having only one child, that can do more than any other single thing to help humanely solve overpopulation on the planet. And in fact, another thing that can help is for people to wake up to the reality. Although it's maybe they're not going to be thrilled to hear it, but the reality is that perhaps the most loving gift that a couple can give to their firstborn child is to have no more children after that.
Yeah, I agree. That's right. That's perfect. What in your estimates, since you seem to be working a lot with statistics, what would be a sustainable population for the United States?
Good question, Jim. The sustainable number for the United States, right now we're at 318, 319 million, somewhere in there.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
A sustainable number in the United States is probably only about 100 to 150 million.
Yeah.
If we want to do three things, if we want to stop the overconsumption and depletion and pollution of many of our gorgeous, vital resources in the United States and the rest of the world, and if we want to stop poverty, increasing poverty levels and so on in the world itself, and if we want to stop the loss of species, of other species, the killing of species, the loss of biodiversity, the U.S. population sustainable. And by the way, when we're saying 100 to 150 million, we don't mean at current rates of consumption. That's another important thing to stress. We're talking about consumption levels that are maybe only half the amount of consumption per capita right now in the United States, or possibly a little more than that. The average European, for example, consumes roughly 2/3 of as much as an average American does. And when we say that 2 billion is probably the sustainable population level in the world long term, sustainable. That's not at an American consumption level. That's more like an average European.
You know, it seems to me that a lot of our problem with population, other than the fact that there's too many, is that it's disproportionate. So we have 10 million living in L.A., maybe as close to half as many in Las Vegas, places that have no water. You know,
That's right.
Places that aren't taking advantage of the sustainable sunshine in order to create electricity. It just seems to me that a lot of the problem is where populations seem to grow up and overpopulate, or in areas that are not well suited to sustain even a small amount of that. Whereas in Oregon here
you're exactly right with that.
We have a lot of resources here in Oregon. It seems to me we could sustain more people here. Not that we could do it right now, but I mean as far as providing more sustainable energy sources and things like that.
Yeah, long term, from the data that I've seen, I don't think Oregon could sustainably provide long term, even at a lower standard of consumption, for the number of people that are in Oregon now, and of course that's why we're saying that we've got to dramatically reduce consumption. We Americans do. Now, see, the poorest 2 to 3 billion people in the world, they don't need to reduce their consumption. They're barely consuming now. I mean, they're not consuming enough to have a decent kind of a life right now. So the poorest couple of billion people in the world, they desperately need, and they're clawing right now to increase their consumption levels, and they rightfully should increase, because they're not having enough. As I say, they don't have enough food, they don't have safe water in many cases. I mean, for hundreds of millions of them, and so on. So we Americans, on average, we need to dramatically reduce our consumption. But that alone is not going to, in any way, reducing consumption doesn't do a thing to help solve overpopulation.
Right.
You know, my wife and I, we compost, we use compact fluorescent bulbs, you know, we drive a Prius, we do a whole bunch of other stuff. We don't have any kids, in fact, we never had children. We do a whole bunch of stuff in order to reduce our ecological footprint. But none of those other things that we do, all those things I named and many more that we do, they don't do anything at all to help solve overpopulation. The only thing that will actually help solve overpopulation is having fewer children and getting the number of children, the average number of births, below 2. And the further below 2 we can get it down, the closer to an average of, say, 1 child that we get it. And you see, getting an average down to 1 child isn't necessarily all that big of a deal when you consider that there are a lot of men and women in the world today who don't have any children. And there are a number who have 1, and there are quite a few today that have 2, and some have more than that. So it's not a huge thing to get the average down below 2 when you realize that a lot of people already don't have any, so that helps to lower that average.
Mm-hmm. You know, it seems like I recently read that one country in particular, Italy, is having a hard time with its population being too small. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm familiar that some people will argue that, and many of the rest of us will say hurrah for Italy and hurrah for many countries in Europe, because they are dramatically, just like Thailand, they're starting to reduce their human numbers, because right now, well, let's take Japan, for example. Japan, 125, 126 million, I forget the exact number of people in Japan. The resource experts tell us that the resources of Japan, the vital the vital natural resources of Japan can support probably no more than 20 to 25 million people.
That sounds right.
There's more than that in Tokyo.
Japan.
There's 40
20
million
to 25
in
million people. And how many are there in Japan? I said earlier, 125 million. So Japan is 5 to 6 times overpopulated right now, above and beyond what is truly sustainable long term. They've got a serious crisis of overpopulation in Japan. And so they're living on borrowed time. As long as they have such massive overpopulation, the only way that they're able to do that right now is to bring massive amounts of resources, to commandeer massive amounts of resources from other parts of the world in order to have enough food and energy and so on. And that that's not sustainable. That just cannot live.
Yeah.
That's got to be stopped.
Yeah, well, being this is just a couple days after the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, that's exactly what created Pearl Harbor.
It was related, surely.
Was their expansionism.
They wanted more resources.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's interesting.
So again, we're all in the same boat. We've all got to pull together on this. We've all got to start recognizing that the world is overpopulated, and pretty much every nation in the world. There are very few nations right now in the world that don't have more people than their resources can sustainably support. Very, very few.
That's right.
Canada comes to mind.
Most have too many.
Canada is full.
Is it Canada full?
Canada's
it's
full.
just such large areas of Canada that don't have any population at all. But I can't speak to Canada. But you know, you mentioned a while back. I forget the context. Something about you said 100 to 150 million people in the United States. You mentioned that you know our push on our resources and our pollutions and all that. And you mentioned species. And so, you know, I do a lot of forest activism, and I understand biodiversity and the species. But I was wondering, in reference to overpopulation, what are your thoughts on the, you mentioned species, I just wondering what your thoughts are on that. Obviously, we're making them go extinct, but I think there's more to it than that.
More to it than that.
Right. The fact that we're just making them go extinct, what exactly, you know, so we lose an animal here, a butterfly there, why is that a problem?
100 species.
Oh well.
Or how many species, too?
It's a problem because for people, for the scientific community who really made a study of natural systems on the planet.
Right. That's what I'm getting at.
They've come to realize that all species have a part that they play in maintaining the health and the biodiversity and the vitality of all of our planet's resources. Okay, they've developed over millions of years and all that. And in fact, there's an analogy that some people make between loss of species and say you were sitting in an airplane about to take off from an airport, and all of a sudden you saw some guy out on the wing of the airplane with a rivet popper, and he was popping rivets out of your airplane. And every time he pops a rivet, in effect, that's like what happens when we lose another species.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Species are so intertwined. You know, we're so interdependent. I mean, in other words, there's lots of species of both animals and plants that we don't even know that yet. Even now, scientists still don't know in many cases what benefits certain species provide to other species on the planet and to the overall health and ecological balance and so on. But my golly sakes, you know, would you want to fly in an airplane if some guy had gotten up there and taken out every third rivet out of the plane and said, well, you know, we got a shortage of rivets. We've decided we're just going to borrow some from this plane, and we think there's too many. We think there's more rivets in this plane than it's needed.
Well, way too much.
Yeah.
You know, what you're saying is true, and it's kind of the point I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about the we need to lower the population and the birth control, and that is definitely what's going on. And it seems to me that a lot of the problem is that people can't see the problem is because people are really not connected up anymore. They don't feel connected to nature. They don't feel connected to each other that much, you know, and the fact that we have cell phones and computers and cars tends to keep us separate from one another. And it seemed to me that a very important educative point for this would be to emphasize how we are so connected. We are just as connected up to the biosphere or whatever as the species are, to each other. We're one of those species as well. And it seems like as long as we consider ourselves separate and above all that, this problem is going to continue.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, certainly, and of course we all know when we think deeply about this that it doesn't. It's pretty. It only takes a few seconds to realize that we're not separate. We're incredibly dependent upon all these other species that have evolved on this planet over many long millennia of time, and so we must wake up to these realities, and that's the commitment. That's our commitment at World Population Balance, that we want to help humanity to change course away from the cliff of overpopulation collapse toward a truly sustainable world. And so we're focused and we're committed to helping Americans, first and foremost, Americans and the rest of the world as well, to wake up to these realities. The grim reality is we're overpopulated. The good news is, the exciting positive news is that overpopulation is solvable. As challenging as we may think it is to reduce birth rate, you realize that as challenging as that may feel to some people, it's a heck of a lot easier to reduce birth rates in the world down below an average of 2. It's a heck of a lot easier to do that than it is to get people to dramatically reduce their consumption. Nobody, as far as we know, throughout history, no community has ever voluntarily reduced their consumption level. Voluntarily, a lot of them have voluntarily throughout history. A lot of communities have voluntarily reduced their birth rates under certain, under various conditions. Mm-hmm. But we don't know of one example where people have voluntarily reduced their consumption. I mean, in other words, if they reduced their consumption, it was because they were forced to do it, but in some way or other. So as challenging as it may seem to some people, and as sort of over the top, some people may think it's over the top to be suggesting that we need to slash our birth rates down to only 0 or 1, or in a few cases 2 children per couple. As challenging as that may feel to some people, that's a ton easier than it is to cut our consumption level by 1/3 or by 1/2.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking a lot of what you've talked about is you're talking about educating people. But are you working at all to work on the legislative end of it? You working with governments, whether it's local, state, or federal, international, UN, or what are moves in that direction? Because you're not going to be able to do it just by educating people.
They don't pay any attention, right?
Well, they aren't now.
Well, we have a lot of associates, Jim, who are working with legislators constantly in Washington, in the Congress. One very close friend of mine, one of my closest friends, working for an organization based in D.C., is spending lots and lots of his time at the UN working on these issues. Mm-hmm. But our particular focus at World Population Balance, we are convinced that in order for this to really be successful, in other words, to humanely stop population growth and then humanely reduce population growth, we are convinced that we need to inspire people to build a groundswell of support for this action, and that's our focus. We've spent over the years, personally, I've spent quite a bit of time talking with elected officials in D.C., members of the Congress and members of the executive branch and so on, for years off and on. But by and large, the political reality is that this issue is so off their radar. It's so far off their radar that they're not willing. I don't care which major party they're from, including the Green Party, by and large.
Really?
They're not willing to look seriously at this issue. One of my favorite bumper stickers says, "When the people lead, the leaders will follow."
It's one of my favorite
and
too.
I'm convinced that when we build a groundswell of people who go to their elected officials and demand that they take action to support dramatic reductions in birth rates voluntarily,
Right.
but to help educate people to the truth of the matter, and then to help them to help support ways in which people will dramatically, just like in Thailand. You know, they used a lot of humor in Thailand when they did it. They like I say, they were averaging 7 children. Now they're averaging less than 2, about, you know, almost down to 1.5 for a while. They set up a program. They used a lot of humor. They set up a program with the police department in Thailand. They called it Cops and Rubbers. And every time the policeman hands somebody a ticket, they hand them a condom. They set up with taxi drivers. Taxi drivers give out condoms. I can
That's
see,
what it takes.
I can see the police in Portland. I can see a day when the police in Portland and in Minneapolis, where I live, New York City, I can see a day when those police will be handing out condoms and other organizations. Why? Because they will be sending the message along with handing out the condom. They will also be sent, or some other form of birth control. They'll be sending a clear message to everybody that they come in contact with. They'll be sending a clear message. Hey, population growth is a problem. Overpopulation is a problem. It's critically important that you don't have another child.
Yeah, that's right. Getting the word out.
For the good of all humanity.
Well, you know, just
including your own children and grandchildren.
Going back to Buckminster Fuller, what is it? They call it Spaceship Earth. Well, you know, if you want to think of it as a spaceship or a boat, you know, a boat can only hold so many people without people starting to fall out or the boat capsizing and sinking. You know, it's an apt analogy in my mind. But, you know, what you were saying made sense to me. And, you know, I didn't know that there was no overpopulation was not part of any significant political party in this country. Maybe we need a population party. We have labor parties.
Oh, okay.
We have parties for a lot of other specific, you know, issues and perspectives. Perhaps that might be a way of getting people online. It was just a thought. But
well, you know, interesting question. You know, this issue has ebbed and flowed in the White House over the last several decades.
Oh.
Probably one of the presidents, perhaps the president, the past American president who was the most concerned of all in the last, say, 50, 60 years about the overpopulation issue, or back then they called it population growth issue. And by the way, a quick distinction about that. You see, 40, 50 years ago, it was appropriate to refer to the population issue as the population growth issue. It's no longer appropriate to define it that way. The problem with the population issue is not population growth as much as it is overpopulation. Population growth is still a problem, yes, but it's a component problem of the much larger, much more overwhelming and serious overpopulation problem. So we need to be defining the problem. That's first and foremost. We need to be defining the problem as it truly is now. See, 50, 60 years ago, we were not overpopulated on the planet, so it was appropriate to call it the population growth problem, but no
I
longer.
can see the distinction,
So the president that was probably the most alarmed about population and who tried to do something about it in the United States
Carter, I'll bet.
to stop the United States population growth, that was former President Nixon.
That's what
Really?
I thought.
He formed a Blue Ribbon Commission in roughly 1970, I think it was. 70s, I think it was. He formed a Blue Ribbon Commission called the President's Commission on Population and the American Future. And he appointed a Blue Ribbon panel chaired by one of the Rockefellers to do research. And they went for about 18 months. They went all over the United States and held hearings to find out from experts and other people what they thought about U.S. population and U.S. population growth. And they came back 18 months later, and they presented their report. And by the way, when Nixon appointed that commission, he had strong bipartisan support from the members, the leadership of both the Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate in Congress.
Good.
And 18 months later, when they came back with their final report, I'm paraphrasing, but they basically said, we find no advantage at all we don't find any economic advantage, any political advantage, any environmental advantage, and certainly no military advantage to increasing U.S. population growth beyond its current level. And at the time, U.S. population was about 200 million, and now today it's over 318 million.
That's right.
So we lost that opportunity. But in Nixon's final book, a few months before he died, he said something to the effect that he thought that population was the most critical issue facing humanity.
You know, it occurs to me that one place that one segment of our population is very much aware of climate change and who are trying to work things of climate change into their model is the military. Do you know if they're happening to be on board with population? Because that's going to be driving wars as much as climate change, or in coalition with one another.
Sure, yeah. I've seen a number of military reports in the last few years where they are terribly alarmed. The U.S. military is tremendously alarmed about, and the security agencies of the U.S. They're terribly alarmed about overpopulation and population growth. However, frankly, my sense of most of them is
cut
that
it off pretty quick.
While they're alarmed about it, they don't see any viable way to stop the population growth. And I'm here to say it is stoppable. We can solve it. We've got to have the guts to be leaders on this issue, just like people like Winston Churchill. He's one of my big heroes. So is Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi. Churchill, when he became prime minister in 1940, the Nazis were starting to roll over France, and many people in Britain, they didn't just think that the Nazis might soon roll over Britain. Many British people, they knew, quote unquote, they were convinced that Britain was soon to fall to the Nazis in 1940. And by golly, Winston Churchill had the real guts and the real courage to be a leader about stopping that, because he said, we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them here, we'll fight them there, blood, toil, tears, and sweat. And
we will never surrender.
If it hadn't been for his leadership, probably, very likely, the British would have been overwhelmed by the Nazis.
David, I pretty much have to stop you. We're at a closing point, and I think you made what you do very clear. And incidentally, it's been very clear of your telephone call. That's worked out very well. I want to thank our crew for making this possible, because they're really helping put it all together. So I just want to thank you for doing it. And I think there's going to be some more developments on this, and that we'll probably end up maybe having a chance to get together on this again soon. But anyway, like I say, I pretty much have to cut you off right now.
I perfectly understand that, perfectly well understand that. I used to work in radio years ago myself.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
All right. Well, it was awful good meeting you, David, and you made a good strong case. And I have notes here. We could go another hour, but we don't have the time. And
terrific. Again, I invite you and everyone else to go visit us at worldpopulationbalance.org.
Right. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll put up our schedule now.
And then we got a video that we can play too if we need to here before our next guest.
Oh, right. Okay.
We don't need to, but it's just something that's there. Yeah, I'd like to have gotten into the media, but we ran out of time.
You are watching the Independent Producers Organization program. This program replays on these channels, at these times, and on these days. Write it down and tell your friends. You are watching the Independent Producers Organization program. This program replays on these channels, at these times, and on these days. Write it down and tell your friends.
Your throat's okay, right?
Greetings, everyone. We're back, and I want to thank my guest, Rebecca Hufford, for coming on today. I've known her through another lady that's been on here, Katie Wilson, she came on and talked about hypnosis, and she had been president of the hypnosis societies in the Northwest area, and that was always very impressive to me. Just, I mean, to be the head of all the ones that do that.
She's a great lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's right. That's right. But so why don't we go ahead? You introduce yourself and tell us what you've all done and.
Okay, what we're up to these days, what trouble we're causing.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm Rebecca Hufford, and I am a hypnotherapist and a transitional coach.
Okay.
And a master NLP practitioner. And NLP is short for Neuro-Linguistic Programming.
Now, Katie was into that.
Right.
Again, that was my guest that works with Rebecca here. She did that and did she won a whole thing for the work
An award,
she did.
yeah.
An award.
Yeah, for working with students, getting them over stage fright. And
really?
Getting them to be able to speak in public.
I didn't hear all the details of that.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
You know, there's all sorts of ways to do it. Because they say, whoever they are, that speaking in public is worse than the fear of death for a lot of people.
I can't believe that. I'm not comfortable unless I have a camera on me.
So some of the things you can do is show people what their inner resources are and get them so that when they go out and they talk to people, they're thinking about a past experience when they've actually been successful.
Okay, so you're going to talk to them about a period of time before when they were more successful.
Right.
Okay. Maybe it was just talking to some kids in the neighborhood?
Maybe it was that learning to tie your shoe. If you can tie your shoe, you've been successful at something.
I remember learning that.
Me too. And that's one way of doing it.
Okay.
And another one is just getting them to start talking in front of small groups, then larger groups, and then finally in front of a camera.
And they do that by just talking wherever they are. In other words, they talk with other kids doing the same thing, and you're trying to expand on that. Okay. No, I didn't know if you had a website or not.
I do. I have a couple of websites, actually.
Okay.
And one of them is my name, RebeccaHufford.com.
Okay.
And I'm also part of a group of hypnosis or hypnotherapists called the Art of Change, Hypnosis and Coaching.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And right now, Kathy and I are working on some pediatric coaching
Okay,
classes
okay.
for coaches and teachers and parents and adults that want to be able to communicate better with youth and children.
Their classes.
Their classes. We're doing some online and some in person, which is
Okay,
kind of exciting.
all right.
And we're doing that. And in fact, we're next month, or no, in February, we're going to have a class here in Portland.
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of exciting. We're getting that together and kind of tightening it up a little bit. It's been in the works for a while.
Okay, okay. You know, as I sit here talking to you, I think back, was I ever having trouble talking to another group, or was I having trouble talking in a class? And I wondered about that. I think mostly once I got going, I didn't have a problem. For example, in high school, you were supposed to bring up a report, just a short report, and you get up in front of. I couldn't wait. You know, I just got excited.
And see, I was the exact opposite. I hated
Yeah.
talking in front of people.
Yeah.
I was terrified of it. And one of the things I did to kind of counteract that is I took drama and ended up being in plays. I was scared to death
I
every
wish
time
I'd
I went on
taken
stage.
debate.
Yeah.
That's what, or speaking, or whatever. But anyway, you're what? So,
So I would go and do plays, and I'd be in front of all sorts, you know, an audience,
Okay.
and I'd be freaking out and just sweating bullets almost.
Oh,
And yet I
okay.
went ahead and did it. And years, you know, over the years and doing that and just doing speaking, I've been a teacher too. So when you speak before 25, 30 students, you kind of get over being afraid of speaking in front of people.
I have always wondered about that. Why don't more, as a matter of fact, why don't more teachers join Toastmasters? Do you know?
I don't know why. Well, and I know teachers that some of them are really great in the classroom, but if you ask them to speak in another public sense or another public
Yeah.
scene, they can't do it.
In other words, they stand up to them starting a class is, well, okay, class, we're going to just, you know, it's just a very casual start. And whereas when you're going to give a speech, all right, our next speaker is, and the speech title is, and pomp and circumstance to get that person up there is
Right,
what
right.
happens in public speaking.
Right, right.
But you're right about the class. It's just kind of a just casual.
But even
starting-
students get afraid of speaking in front of the class.
Oh, yes,
So,
yes.
you know, I have
it's
to.
formal.
If it's formal, right. And they do formal presentations. And you kind of have to teach them how to do that and to get over that fright. And I've had a few students in the past, and I taught high school.
Oh, okay.
I had a few students in the past that never got over it, that they refused to do it in front of the class. They'd say, can we do it in your office? Can we do it in private?
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
How did they? You didn't force them to do it, apparently.
You know, some people, they were really, really afraid.
Okay.
There was a lot of, there was one, not, yeah, I guess there were some fears there.
Did they tell you, like in the beginning, I say, I don't want to have to get up and.
Right, before
Okay,
each project
before
where
you
they
even
had to,
started.
you know, I'm not going to do this in front of the class. I'll do it in front of you
Okay.
in your office. And so some of the things I would tell people is if you're going to have a pat speech, because I always did that, I would always lose my
Oh,
place
yes.
when I was speaking.
Uh-huh.
And so I would have these huge pieces of paper that had font on it like that big
Okay.
so that I wouldn't lose my place, number one.
Okay. All right.
And then after a period of learning how to do it over and over again, I found out I didn't need that piece of paper necessarily. That if I
That's
knew
what
the
happens.
topic well enough, that I could wing it.
Okay.
And that always seems to be a little better. I feel more comfortable, and I'm not stumbling and maybe losing my place and papers and all of that.
Yeah. Okay. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. It's just getting used to it.
Right. And being able to go with the flow. Because if you have a set speech there, or set dialogue, and something maybe distracts you, you can get lost, or somebody asks a question that throws you off on another topic, which would be okay. But if you don't have that written down, sometimes it isn't.
You could, I mean, just like Toastmasters, you could start out these ones that you're having trouble with. How would you like to give a talk and just tell us about what you did when you were little? It would just be 1 or 2 minutes. They could just start out with such a small, gradual thing.
Right, and I usually didn't have them up there alone. They could be up there with other people. So that was nice.
Okay.
There's always safety in numbers.
Okay.
And if they ended up coming into my office and giving a speech, my office is usually full of people, and so I'd have 1 or 2 people in there watching them anyway, just for them to get used to having more than one person as an audience.
And would they give them to you in your office? Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's really all part of coaching.
It is part of coaching. That's one of the aspects of coaching you can do. Absolutely. With the pediatric coaching, this is for youth between the ages of 4 and maybe 18.
Okay. That's interesting. It goes up so high.
It does go so well. There's new research out that people don't actually mature completely until they're 24.
Oh, wow.
Which maybe makes me understand some of the things my daughter has done when she was younger, in her late teen, early 20s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How was she on speaking? And
She was good on speaking.
oh, okay.
She was good at that. Yes. But so the research has found that people up until the age of 24, maybe even 25, they still do things that teenagers do or adolescents do because their brain is still activated that way, which is kind of interesting.
Probably one of the reasons why they didn't want to drop the age for voting or something like that.
Right.
Have more time to think out,
And to
and
mature
yet
a
you
little.
want them involved.
Right, and to mature a little bit. Yeah, and not do such risky behaviors and be so. And part of what they're doing, the research has also shown that part of what they're doing is a natural tendency that actually helps the human race and society as a whole. The going against your parents and wanting to have your peer group as the people you look up to when you get to a certain age. Because if you didn't do that, you'd never leave the house.
Oh.
So that's kind of getting you prepared to go off into the world itself.
Well, I have almost no situations like that. But, people just want to stay home or something like that.
Right, right.
That's unfortunate. And that's one of the problems with staying at home and taking your classes, your online classes, and doing certain things at home, including the, what is it when the parents teach them? Homeschooling.
Homeschooling, right.
How do you not get out and get around people? You need to.
And they do have activities that homeschoolers can do together as a group. So that is there. What's interesting now, and I'm not sure quite how it works, is the online school, because you have a community, but it's a community of people online. So there's not necessarily the face-to-face contact with fellow students. And a lot of people are saying that Facebook in colleges is becoming more and more prevalent, or the social media, because you can ask questions of people and they can give you answers.
On Facebook?
On Facebook,
okay.
Or Twitter, Instagram, or Google Plus, or something like that. You can go out and do surveys and also find out information from other people, or where to get the information from other students.
I'll admit I haven't gotten into that. It sounds like I really would like to get more into Facebook and everything else. Now and then I can get into someone I know, but this thing you're talking about where you communicate between others. Oh.
Just the other couple weeks ago, a friend of mine lost their dog, and so they put on Facebook, and about 4 or 5 hours later, somebody commented
Wow.
that found the dog. which is kind of neat that you can do things like
great.
that. Yeah.
Because even Oregon Humane Society, I don't think can't get back to you that fast.
No, and they just happen to find you in the neighborhood. And,
Of course, the dog's usually close by anyway.
Right,
That's something
right.
I've always found. Of course, we're
but
almost,
you got to go out and look for them and do
Right.
that whole searching thing. And this, they just posted on Facebook, here's this dog, got out of the yard. Like I said, 3 or 4 hours later, oh, we found the dog. It was down the street in a neighbor's yard.
Oh, okay, okay. There's always somebody that loses their dog or something. That's a good, one of the best things to have. Social media. Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, a little more on this perhaps. You're having a class that are getting set up already, and
Right, we've done one pilot class. And we have the videos ready. And
pediatric coaching magic manual. Pediatric coach magic 1. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And this is the first one. This is going to be a series of 9.
Oh, okay.
And this one is really getting kind of an introduction and setting up with building rapport.
Okay.
And that's very important in hypnosis or coaching or interviewing, having a rapport with the people that you're going to be working with.
Well, that comes down to when they get to a certain point, they're going to be out looking for a job.
Yes. And and coaching and hypnosis and NLP can help with that too. It's pretty amazing.
I still haven't pinned down the NLP. I know it stands for totally involved when she won that award. But it's still hard to understand.
Right. And rapport is very important, especially when looking for work. Because if you're
Yeah.
interviewing, you're out there and you want to be able to show that the person you're being interviewed with, you can talk to them and you can build a relationship in a short period of time.
That's right.
Yeah. And there's methods to do that.
Okay. Okay. So you'll be giving classes on that.
Classes to parents and to teachers and to fellow coaches on how to do coaching with children
Okay.
and adolescents.
How do you get the word out on this? It's
Social media
okay. Of course. How else?
is one thing.
What am I thinking?
And that's also just kind of telling people about it that have taken classes before. But these days, with marketing, especially if you're a small business, social media is really a big thing now. It's
Yeah.
and it's constantly changing.
Okay.
So you can never really be right there with it. You're always kind of a step behind it. There are people out there that are teaching people how to use it, and on top of it, but things like there are things in when you could go do searches, such as a term called keywords
Oh yeah.
and search engine optimization. Those are always changing, so you have to kind of keep on top of how they're changing, which is kind of a difficult thing to do sometimes because such as Google searches have changed so much over the time that Google's been around. Because it used to be you could just type in words and they'd find everything related to that.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
now there's about 50 algorithms that they use to help you personalize your search.
What does that mean?
I'm not quite sure what that means.
Okay. All
But
right.
what they do is they look at where you're located, what searches you've done before, what your words you've used before, what your interests were before, and then they look and see what's out there that you would be interested in.
Okay. Huh.
So there's no longer just typing in the words and saying, okay, I want to
That-
know about rabbits in Angola.
Okay. It's probably there, right?
Probably there.
Oh yeah. Right. Right. Which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So
I'm
that's
al-
one of the ways we're getting the word out there is through social media. Also, like I said, through other classes that we've been teaching and that Kat teaches and I teach. And being a teacher, I've given it to put the word out to some of the teachers I used to work with. So,
Okay. Okay.
and being a teacher in high school, you do a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
whether you realize it or not.
Of course, maybe I just haven't experienced anything like that. The closest I came to that was a teacher at high school that some of the boys just came in late and wanted to know how to diagram things, and she would help.
Wow.
And I thought that was, not every teacher did that.
No.
Of course, I always wondered what they were being paid for and why they wouldn't help individual students. But this one was helpful like that.
And I think the world's changed a lot since you or I were in high school.
Well, of course.
And there's different things that they need coaching with. I know that these days, everyone's expected to go to college once they leave high school. That's one of the expectations of the educational system.
Well, in a way, that had always been the case, but maybe it's looked at differently now.
It's a little, it's a really kind of a forceful thing.
And there's a horrendous problem with the money.
Yeah.
It's talking $40,000 to go to a regular college.
Just about after 4 years.
4 times 40.
Yep.
I mean, a parent has to think, where am I going to get that $160,000?
And there's loans. Yeek.
No, that's right.
And I know that in schools now, if you want to go to college, there are counselors are great there. They help you fill out the form to get federal assistance or assistance of any kind, and they help you look for grants and scholarships, which are great.
In other words, there's all kinds of help.
There is help.
I'm thinking that a person just goes and say, University of Oregon, and what have you got? But you're saying it's better than that.
It is better than that. There is now a whole website. There's multiple websites you can go to look at scholarships and financial aid to see if you qualify. And there's counselors. The counselors know how to do that much more than when I was in high school, because I went to high school in another state, and I don't remember getting any help at all when it came to college and all of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, but like I said, they're very, and they start asking students to think about that even when they're in middle school, elementary school. What do you want to be when you grow up? So that's a big question these days. And it's taken pretty seriously by the education now. They do, there's programs and activities you can do to figure out what you like, what you're able to do, what your aptitude is for. So by the time you get to be a senior in high school, you have more of an idea of what you want to do, a realistic idea.
Yeah, okay.
Because I wanted to be an actress, of course, and
okay.
Yeah, but I wasn't very realistic.
Drama,
yeah.
Okay.
But now it's much more realistic. And so if you wanted to become that, what steps are you willing to do? And here are the steps you're going to have to do. So there's that laid out for you, which is nice.
They have some pretty far out courses. Now that isn't it. What you want to specialize in, your major. Pretty different major, complicated ones that I guess some students, it's like they want to take one that everybody can relate to and another one that's anthropologic, something to do with some distant foreign country or something that is not that convenient. That's why your main major has to be more relative.
Right, right. And we are high school students these days, as they're, so a ninth grader or an eighth grader these days, they're going to be doing maybe a job that hasn't even been created yet.
That's right.
Which is just crazy to think about.
So fast.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think about.
And what's so amazing that I hear a lot of, the jobs are less and less. They become less and less as you need less people in the whole economy to do the jobs that provide the engine for the country.
Right.
There's so many that aren't working.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get any satisfaction out of that. unless you do something heavy volunteering or something that makes your life worthwhile. You are in trouble if you don't do something.
I know I was reading something like that earlier today, I think it was, that the newer companies that are coming out, they might have 60 people, 120 people, whereas if you look at Kodak, they had 140,000 people working for them.
Way back when, right?
Way back when,
Yeah.
You know, before they stopped, they went bankrupt. They had 140,000 people working for them, and companies like that don't have that many people working for them anymore because they don't have to.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're right. The jobs aren't necessarily there, or the jobs are changing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So it's interesting, you know, thinking about training people or educating people for things that aren't even there yet.
That's
I know-
right.
I was a marketing teacher. I was a business teacher, and so when I first started teaching, about 15 years ago or so, I was teaching them how to make an ad in a paper or in a
Okay.
magazine, and now there's still magazines out there and there's still papers, but most of the papers are now online. So you have to be able to know how to promote your service, your products, or anything online. So the whole idea of marketing has also changed completely.
oh yes, oh yes. I know one thing. I'd rather hold that paper and open it and look at it, and that includes seeing an ad
Right,
that would be interesting.
right, right. And there's so much coming at us now when it comes to all of that, that you don't have, you have an attention deficit almost, because you don't know where to put your attention to, because everywhere you go there's stuff coming at you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And if you're and most of the younger people today, and some of the older people, are really on the web and the internet and are connected a lot. I mean, now we can carry it around in our pocket.
yeah. That's right. Incredible. As a matter of fact, everybody walking along down the street is doing that, and it's crinking their neck or something.
Or you go out to dinner and nobody talks to anybody because they're busy talking to somebody else that's
Each one of them are on there.
they have their own link.
I don't even see how there can be that much stuff to look at.
There isn't. Well, there really isn't. I mean, and I'm trapped by it too, I got to admit.
Do you
Yeah.
have one of those?
I have one of those, and
Okay,
I
okay.
use it, and I sit there and la la la. But you're right. There isn't a lot out there, but it's a way to stand in line.
Okay.
You know, something to do besides talking to people in line. But it's funny to go out to dinner and have people at the table not necessarily talk to each other
That's right.
because they're busy looking at all sorts of different things.
Okay.
But that's the downside. The upside is a lot of fun when you're having a discussion or an argument and you go, let's find out if that's true.
Okay.
And you have all the resources of a lot of places right there at your fingertips.
Okay. That's
Who
right.
was in that movie in 1975?
Oh my. Oh my. Yeah. That's amazing. That's right.
It is. It's totally amazing. It's incredible.
I was going to ask before I forgot. You still do some of the hypnosis stuff with her? How does that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, she's in fact, she was going to be here tonight, but she's doing an online
Oh,
hypnosis
really?
class.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So she does part of it online and then part of it in person.
Okay.
So she's doing the online part on Wednesday nights. And so she's doing the classes. And I do hypnosis in my office. And I range from doing weight control all the way
Yeah.
to helping with smoking and learning how to get over relationships and getting rid of unnecessary beliefs or unresourceful beliefs or behaviors, nail biting, addictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe not kind of getting in your own way sometimes of your success, or fear of
Okay.
success.
That's right.
Yeah, or being unmotivated. So getting rid of, getting people motivated,
Okay.
getting people to think about self-esteem, raise self-esteem.
No.
Yeah.
That's right. Picking up self-esteem from nothing seems like sure be part of it.
Yep, yep, and it is, and that's a great thing to do. I love doing that because you can start seeing the difference as you go through and work with people that they come in and they're brighter, they're happier, they're more content with who they are.
Okay. I suppose the weight, that's difficult. I think that would be one of the more difficult ones, is to weight control. And is that right?
It can be, and it really depends on how motivated the person is to change their behavior or their beliefs. And if someone's really motivated to do it, then the suggestions and the work we do is easier. And some people come in maybe to quit smoking or to do weight control, and they're doing it for someone else, not for themselves. And that's when it's really difficult.
Wait a minute. You would try to talk to them so that they could talk to someone else?
No, so someone might come in and go, my wife wants me to quit smoking. My husband wants me to lose weight.
Okay.
And so if they aren't doing it really for themselves,
Well, yeah.
then it's hard to get motivated.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So then you have to find out what their motivation is, and also at the same time, why do they do what they do? Because in neurolinguistic programming, there's always this idea of secondary gain. So when they're smoking or when they're eating, overeating, they're doing it because they're getting something out of it. It may be a comfort, it may be something to do. It might have been that at one time it was used to belong. Like smoking. Smoking was a big one. When I was a teenager, you smoked because you could be part of the in crowd.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I still can't get over all the movies and the things where everybody's got a
Cigarette in their hand. Yeah, yeah.
And you're going to keep seeing those old movies, and they're going to keep having that cigarette.
Right.
And there's going to be this puff of smoke go up in the room, and you now know that's a problem.
Right.
That's how people get cancer.
Yeah.
That's
And
a
as
problem.
an ex-smoker, you're seeing that going, God, wouldn't that be great to have one of those? Unless you've gone through a program of some kind and going, I never want to see that again. That's just, that's disgusting.
Smoking is so funny. I know people that can smell smoke half a block away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's very true. Very true.
It never bothered me when someone right across from me did it. And it didn't help them any.
No.
And
And it didn't help you any either, but you didn't mind it.
you got away from it.
Right.
I always thought it was interesting how when you were smoking, they said if you stopped smoking, you'd have this effect within a week or so. You'd feel better. And then when another 2 weeks, this would make you feel better. In a month or so, your lungs would start having an effect. I always remember that being such a dramatic effect
Right.
on
Right.
people that smoked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I said, when I was younger, and it's not so much anymore, which is good, but to be cool and to be in the in crowd, you had to smoke. That was part of it, and that was a way of growing up too.
Yeah.
When I was, but then when I was in high school, we had smoking sections in high school for the students.
Oh, not just the teacher's
Not just
lounge.
Not just the teacher's lounge. And I remember seeing movies of that or comedies of it, and smoke would be billowing out of the teacher's lounge.
Okay.
In a joke. But on our campus, when I was in high school, we had a smoking section for students.
Okay.
Which is, and that doesn't happen anymore, which is good.
And the students probably finalized it. They probably got rid of it themselves.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of non-tolerance there when it. I mean, I keep seeing. Oh, by the way, you can't smoke within 50 feet. No, you can't smoke within 100 feet.
Right.
Now, where did all that come from?
I don't know. Well, it's statutes, and what is it? I was reading someplace about how they're trying to make it so you can't smoke in like a public park.
Yeah, that's right.
Any public space.
And that's I don't know. That's a little bit too much for me. And also when they say you can't smoke on the beach. Oh,
wow. Well, maybe that's kind of
that's too much.
That's carrying a bit too much. But then you've got to find some place to put your butts or to put the leftover cigarettes, because those are just those filters are really not good.
Yeah, those are not biodegradable.
No.
Used to be, in order to get rid of everything, you'd rip the paper apart, turn it into a ball, and then the tobacco, it could go down to the ground.
Right.
But the cigarette butt.
That filter.
Filter, that's it. That's the word. They don't go anywhere.
No, not for a long, long time.
And that's
and when you're smoking, you're breathing all that in, because the smoke goes through that and into your lungs, and if it can't decompose, what are you breathing in?
That's right.
You're breathing in stuff that can't decompose. It's going into your lungs, which can't be healthy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Am I missing anything to do with this?
Let's see here. So again, we're doing this to help parents and teachers.
Okay.
To help to communicate, and also one of our goals is to help children become a little more mindful of themselves.
Okay.
Leading a more mindful life.
Yeah. Or it's something more than you have no purpose, you have some purpose.
You have some purpose, and maybe asking yourself as a young person, or even as an adult, why am I acting this way? What's going on? What's behind this? What is, maybe observing oneself more and asking yourself those questions. Maybe if you're having a problem or a situation, why am I having this problem or situation? What could I do to help with it? As a child or even as an adult, when you have this, what resources do I have? What are the resources that I don't have that I could go out and get?
Yeah.
And I know as a young person, you aren't always thinking about that because you're more immediate. And as a mom, as a mother, before I started learning how to coach, my gut instinct was to go, I just want to fix it. And if somebody's bullying you or somebody's making you uncomfortable, don't worry about them, just ignore it. Which is a great thing to say, but is that realistic for a child to just ignore something?
I have found out a long time ago that this thing about, let's see specifically, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And I found out names will hurt the person, and they will damage people.
Right.
Okay, that's true, but I have to comment that sticks, if you're bicycling, will kill you.
That's true.
and that has happened to one person I know of, and another had a horrible accident because of sticks. Your bike goes along and it flips it up into the spokes.
Right.
And you go over.
And
And it's
that's a very scary thing to have happen.
That's right. That's why I steer clear of sticks.
Very, very scary.
But anyway, we're talking about names.
Names and actions. It could be actions.
Okay.
When people are maybe bullied
bullied is coming.
Yeah,
right.
Bully's a big thing. And so how can you react to that so that you're not the target? Or if you are a bullier, what can you do to change your behavior so you no longer want to bully people or you no longer bully people?
Well, I think the thing is about not being the target is somehow you have to categorize what someone is sending you. Say, I'm not going to pay any attention to that.
Yes, but it's very hard when you're in a situation, I think, to say, I'm not going to pay any attention to that.
Yeah.
So, and as an adult, that's what I would tell my child is, just ignore them. Think about the source. Don't worry about it. It's not true. But as a child, when you hear that,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily believe that.
Okay, you're going to believe what the bully is
What
saying.
the bully is saying. Well, and they have much more presence there, I think, at the time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of emotion. And so it triggers things in you as a child. It triggers things in the child to react to it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that we do with this course and with pediatric hypnosis too is really should help people not be the victim so much, to give them those tools to really believe it as they say, I'm not listening to you because your opinion means nothing to me. Because a lot of times when an adult says to do that to a child, the child can't do it because they don't have the resources to do it.
I think a victim with a bully, they need to be able to think that they're not going to be bullied by them, and they should not react to the bully in such a way as to encourage the bully. I've always felt that that was part of it, of this whole thing. Bullies like to go after people they can get reactions out of, right? So
That's very true.
Yeah.
And again, so students and children and adolescents need the resources so they can actually go ahead and do that and say, your opinion doesn't matter to me because I have enough self-esteem and I know who I am enough that what you're saying isn't true.
yeah, the bully probably won't understand the word self-esteem, but
And that might be part of the reason why a bully does the bullying is because he has a lack of self-esteem.
that's right.
He has a lack of self-esteem.
Oh yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And so they would go, if that was the case, then we would go in there with the bully and say, well, what happens when you do this? What do you feel? What's going on inside as you're wanting to do these things? And what's a better behavior, a better thing to do besides that? And give them ideas
Yeah,
of what to do. Because sometimes they just don't have they don't know what to do.
that's right. There's so much that people just don't know and are.
Well, especially younger people, they're learning how to do all of this, and they don't necessarily know how to do it right. Not that adults necessarily know how to do it right all the time either, but we have a little more experience.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I was going to go back over what we talked about earlier, getting people to have more confidence in speaking, because I have a feeling that there's some people that don't have the total confidence in speaking. I wish they had a little more than they do. And so one of the points you made is that speaking in front of a small group, and then it's speaking in front of a larger group, and getting to the point where they can just go right out there and do it. Of course.
Right. And the more you do it, and you must know this, the more you do it, the less afraid you are of it.
Oh yes. Right,
So, and
right.
at first it's frightening. I remember that feeling, just going, I can't do this. But the more I did it, and the more I had to do it, it became easier and easier to do. And I'm also not afraid to make a fool out of myself, so that helps a lot.
Oh, okay.
But again,
All
the
right.
more I did it, and I think if I had some of these techniques, it would have been easier from the very beginning of going in
that
there.
are in here?
That are in here,
Oh,
or
yes,
that we're
okay.
teaching. They're not necessarily in this book, but that we're
Okay, but
teaching.
they're-
And we
yeah.
teach when we do coaching and when we coach people, such as, again, getting the resources you have and saying, okay, when I touch this shoulder, I'm going to have these resources here, and I'm going to feel good about this, and I know what I'm doing. Because I think a lot of it too is you walk out there and you go, all these people are looking at me, and do I really know what I'm saying? Do I really know this stuff? And so making people feel more confident about themselves.
because you need to have confidence in your subject.
Yeah, and in yourself.
Yeah. I'm going to tell them something they don't know, and I want to do it emphatically. And,
And in a way that will excite them or get them
Yes.
moving or get them noticing or whatever you want. Yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah.
That's right. I don't think, I mean, I sit here talking, the very things we're talking about is what Toastmasters is all about. And of course, just one or two people out there went and tried to join Toastmasters, we'd have done a lot of good here. So I'm just thinking it's a good subject to learn how to, and this thing where you're saying that people come and tell you, I don't want to talk in front of the class. I just don't want to do it. I never knew anybody quite like that. I knew ones who were ahead of me in the seats at school said words to that effect, but they still got up there.
And most of them say that, but they still get up there and do it.
Yeah.
But there's a few of them that emphatically won't do it,
Okay.
that refuse.
Okay.
And they will, in fact, get the bad grade rather than present in front of the class.
Yeah.
That's how afraid they are of speaking in front of people. That they're willing to take the D or the F.
My brother-in-law was in Toastmasters, and we were talking about the initial things that caused us to become involved in speaking. And I got such a kick out of his first story. He said that he was in school, and he did something like he held the door, let's say he held the bathroom door open so the kid couldn't come out. Just something not real serious. But the teacher caught him and said, okay, now you're going to have to write a report or give a speech in front of the class. He said, I'll give the speech in front of the class every time. And he never had a problem with that.
And there's people that have no problems with that at all.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing. To me, I find that's a great thing, because I struggled with it for a long, long time. I was a very shy person. And I wouldn't go up and do my own ordering when I was a younger person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, I can't go up there and talk to them. You have to go order for me.
Really?
Yeah, at McDonald's or wherever.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm not going up there and telling them what I want. No.
Oh, that's serious.
It was very
that means
serious.
we won't eat.
Right. But again, I did things that kind of counteracted that, just instinctively, because of things I liked, like going into drama and finding myself in front of people and having to do those speeches. They weren't necessarily my speeches, but anything that was in front of a group of people was terrifying for me. And I repeatedly put myself in that situation.
Oh, okay.
Because I liked it at the same time.
Well, you must have come out of it at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, like I said, putting myself in that situation repeatedly over and over again was a way to help me come out of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You know.
All right. Yes.
And again, if someone had showed me some of these things that you can do in coaching and neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, such as remember a time when you were really successful. Remember, what are you really passionate about when you talk? Because there were things, even when I was younger, that I was very passionate about and I could go on for a long time.
Okay.
And if I had talked about that, that would have been different. And so think about that and talking about that. But nobody really had those tools for me at that point in time.
Okay.
Because that was just, I went to high school in the early 70s. And that was just about when they were really beginning to put together and develop neurolinguistic programming.
Oh, okay.
Early and late 70s.
There was.
But Toastmasters was around, and that would have been great for someone like me. Push me up there and make me do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's important. Getting support.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And getting support and getting the resources, knowing that you've been successful at something, and if you can be successful at one thing, you can be successful at something else.
You should have an inclination. Right.
And if somebody else is successful at it, then you can be successful at it.
Okay.
Because that's the other idea behind neurolinguistic programming, is you can model someone else
Oh.
of that's really good at something. Is look and see how they do it, and then do it just like they do it.
Yeah. Okay. That is one way to do business, and businesses. How people, they look and see how, well, if you can do it.
And how do you do that? How did they do that? And then modeling how they did whatever they did. So let's say you wanted to be a good speaker, and you might look at maybe Bill Clinton, because he's a good speaker.
Oh, yes, yes.
And how does he do that? And just kind of break down how he does it. If you got a chance to ask him questions, how he does it, and then go ahead and use his model of doing it.
He's like the classroom teacher. You can just
He's
start
better than
talking.
classroom. Yeah, he's better than classroom teacher. I mean, there are certain things I don't necessarily like about him, but he's a good speaker.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the presidents we have, including the one now, can be great speakers, but that doesn't solve the problem.
No, but they're great
necessarily.
speakers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have a method of doing it. They have a game plan. And if you can find out how they do that, what they're feeling, what they're going through, then you can model that behavior and be as good as they can be.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. Well, of course, that's why they have all these programs where you learn from.
And coaches. People that
Okay.
help you write your speeches and help you coach you on your speaking.
Where does a person start to get either coaching or coaches, or to get involved in it? I assume it's in the phone book, but maybe...
They're in the phone books. There's things online. There's online coaching classes. There's in-person coaching classes. There's institutes. The Positiva, where Kathy works, does coaching classes that are great, and we do this. There's online coaching, and then there's various organizations out there. There's the International Coaching Federation, which is really for coaches, and they do education, which is great.
Coaching is becoming a bigger deal now.
It is becoming, yeah. And in the United States, we're a little behind. In Europe and in other parts of the world, coaching is already being used a lot.
I mean, you think of it as somebody trying to get you to run faster, or jump higher, or catch the ball oftener, or do something like that. But that isn't necessarily what coaches, like you do.
Right. No, I don't necessarily do that, but I help people go through transitions. That's one of the main things I work on, is people going through transitions. And I was just talking.
What does that mean?
Well, so it might be a change in life, maybe
that
the
they're
empty
going
nest.
through?
Yes, an empty nester, somebody whose children have left, or there might be a change in their marital status, or they're going through a serious illness, helping them transition through that. And I was just, that's really funny, because I was just talking to someone earlier in the week and last night about a lot of people don't like change. Change can be difficult for some people.
They have to go through something. Quite often it takes some effort. That's right.
And my goal is to make change, whatever it is, exciting and fun.
Okay.
Because even though it might be a terrible thing you're going through, there's always opportunities there in the midst of change. And it'd be great to see those opportunities instead of just being focused on the negative of the change.
Suppose someone's trying to quit smoking. How do you talk about a positive? Are you going to feel better? Look at how you're going to feel better. What do you say?
That is one of the things you can do, is talk about how you're going to feel better as you start to change your habits. And again, the other thing is to really find out what do you get out of smoking? What do you really get out of that? And find out if you can talk to that part that likes to smoke and see if you can get that same feeling from another activity.
Okay. 'Cause I got it firsthand that a smoker, you do get a rise.
You do.
Yeah.
I haven't being an ex-smoker.
You
do
something else and get a rise, okay?
Yeah. And it might be eating carrots. It might be going for a walk. It might be riding a bike. And so it's changing the focus and the centers of your brain to not get pleasure from that, but to get pleasure from something else.
That's right, and I think running is a perfect example because you get a high on that probably compares with a good
Probably better.
smoke. Yeah,
Probably better
yeah,
than a
it's
good
certainly
smoke,
better for you to get the runner's high. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Or just walking. You know, some people can get it from walking. And just, you know, noticing what's all
Yeah,
around you. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, we're just about there for the end of the show, and this
Wow.
is where it cuts off.
Okay.
Just like that. So we're gonna. Is there any other quick comment you wanted to make? Where this is if they want. I don't know that we put up the website, but it's Positiva.
Apositiva.com.
Apositiva.com.
And artofchangehypnosis.com.
Artofchangehypnosis.com. Okay. All right, and that's about taking some of these classes.
Taking some of these classes. If you're going through transitions, helping you through transitions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to think. I'm going to think about that word transition.
I've had
Really an interesting.
I've
word.
had 2 or 3 years of transition. So,
Oh, okay.
and my goal through part of my transition was to cause as much trouble as possible. And I'm here to talk about it, which is kind of cool.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, we have done that. Okay, again, I want to thank my guest, Rebecca Hufford, for coming on.
Thank you.
And we'll look for you next time when we have another show. It'll be the second Wednesday in January.
Fantastic.
And I think we're going to have a man that tries to get dogs back to their original owners who are veterans. I think it's going to have an